Hello, everyone. We are back for another episode of Drunk Bible Study bonus time. And this time, we're talking about stones. We're talking about great stones from heaven. So yeah,
no, that was so good. You
found...
lost the energy. It was like this beat poetry. You just went into it. It was great. I really liked that.
No, yeah, I don't know about this. Whoa, okay. Yeah. This is like an article. I'm not sure where this article is from. What does this say? Does this say SAO NASA Astrophysics Data System? I think this is full of shit, but here we are. Yeah. C.C. Wiley apparently wrote this article talking about, in the account of the defeat of the 5 kings by the armies of Israel under the leadership of Joshua, it is stated that the defeated armies were fleeing and the Lord cast down great stones from heaven upon them, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, cool. And that, yeah, more died from hailstones than all of the children who were slewn with swords.
Slewn with swords.
Oh, Tyndale's sneaking his way in. Can't keep him down.
Yeah. Slewn with swords, yeah. So apparently many writers have assumed that in spite of the word hailstones, the account refers to a shower of meteorites.
Oh.
Of meteorites.
We didn't think about that one.
No, exactly.
It's like the most
exactly.
epic of all the options.
Yeah.
So apparently meteorites have been known from remote antiquity. In the 10th chapter of the book of Joshua, there's a brief account of great stones from heaven which fell upon the enemies of the children of Israel and killed them. So the evidence is overwhelmingly strong that we have here the account of the fall of a number of meteorites rather than hailstones. I don't know about that, but okay.
I mean,
so
it's a cool story. I'm into it. I'll go with it.
It is. That the narrator doubtlessly exaggerated the relative number of men killed by them is wholly immaterial and to be expected under such unheard of circumstances. So
okay. You know what?
They think that it's meteorites.
That's actually a fairly fair assessment, I would say. Of say the meteorites killed a few. How crazy is that, though, that everyone's like, oh my gosh, you know, one person said oh, it killed 5 people. And the next one's like, I heard it killed 5 leagues of people, you know, and the next one's it killed more people than the swords did.
Exactly. At a time where there's no real fact checking.
Right. Right.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous telephone game for sure. So, well, I was wondering, I mean, if it's not meteorites, if it's not what we thought it was, which was lava or whatever, or
we didn't
lava
think that.
Stones.
Just Dedeker thought that.
I didn't think it was lava.
Okay.
I thought it was stones from an eruption.
I'm gonna say hail. Actually, now I'm on Team Meteor, but before it was hail.
Okay, no, we're all united. We're all united in it being rocks and not ice, right?
Okay.
Yes. Are we Team
however,
Rock, not Team Ice?
Team Rocket.
Okay, maybe, but Team Rock. But if it were Team Ice, I wanted to look up why or if ice could actually kill someone. And apparently, yes, they can. Apparently in 2006, at least 27 people died as tornadoes and hailstorms struck the Midwest. And the South on Sunday. And it says that, there were softball-sized balls of falling ice, and a tree fell on one person, another died when his mobile home rolled over, and this is the best part, a baby was blown down the street?
No.
What?
No.
Jeez.
I'm assuming it's in a carriage and it was blown away, but somebody retrieved it. I'm assuming. I don't know. That's such a ridiculous line. I thought it was hilarious, but yes, who the heck knows?
I don't know whether to cry or to laugh. It sounds like a really terrible tragedy, but also at the same time, a baby was just blown down the street. It doesn't say that it died. It just says it was blown down the street.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
We're just this desensitized to violence.
Yeah, maybe
now
that too. After we've
Bible's
listened to
done this.
Joshua just slaughter an entire region, every single man, woman, child, baby being blown down the street seems not that bad.
Yeah.
No, the baby was probably blown away, but somebody retrieved him in his basket and he was fine. I'm assuming that that's what happened. But okay, apparently, yes, hailstorms have caused only a handful of deaths in the United States over the last 100 years or so. Most of them killed were children, so that makes sense.
Geez.
Oh, wow.
It says adults do get hit, but they're far less likely to perish from their injuries.
I guess that makes sense.
Someone was like, I got hit so hard I thought I was going to pass out. One Fort Worth, Texas victim of a softball-sized hail told the Associated Press in 1995. So,
wow.
yeah.
That's sad.
So it could have been hail.
Yes. It could have been hail. In China, 7 people died in Zhengzhou from a storm of egg-sized hail, and dozens more ended up in the hospital.
Jeez.
So, well,
Well, have you ever
It
seen
can happen.
those like pictures or videos of the damage to like cars from
yeah,
hailstorms?
from windshields. Yeah.
If you were stuck out in that,
it says it's
oh yeah,
4.5 inches in diameter. Sometimes is a softball-sized hailstone.
Yeah, that would mess you up.
Grapefruit size. Yeah, baseball size 2.75 inches. Still, I wouldn't want any of these hitting me in any regard.
no,
no, thank
really
you.
not. I've never been anywhere that's had hail larger than maybe ball bearing size. Have either of you ever seen
Yeah.
like big hail?
Probably
no
not
way.
bigger than maybe a marble at the biggest.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
still scary though.
Uh-huh.
think I
It
have.
is scary.
So speaking of being desensitized to violence,
Boy.
I've got some things to share. But first, just real quick, I wanted to cover timeline stuff, right? Okay, so here's what I got for you. The book of Joshua takes place over about 21 years. So that's kind of to give us a perspective of the whole time is about 21.
Okay.
Now, Joshua becomes the leader, like he takes over for Moses in 1406. According to this estimation here on BibleHub.com, 1406 BC, and then has finished defeating everyone by sometime during 1405. So this is only
Okay.
maybe 2 years at the most, maybe 1 year if it kind of started during the middle of one and ended during the middle of the other. Right? It's like 1 to 2
Yeah.
years for doing all of this conquering.
That's a
that
lot
happens.
in 2 years.
Yeah. But I guess it makes sense, though, because it seemed back to back to us and probably seemed back to them, but it's more like a few months at a time,
Yeah,
probably beating each of them or something. I also, oh gosh, I don't know if I still have the page up, but there was one of these things that was totaling up the number of kings that Moses defeated versus Joshua.
Oh.
Ooh. Joshua totally creamed him, didn't
Yeah, he's got to.
With Moses, it was like 2. And Joshua, it's like 31 or
Jeez.
something.
he?
Just,
Whoa.
just bonkers.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Like now there's this
Wow.
image that Joshua was just like chomping at the bit under Moses. So he's
Oh,
just
I
like,
didn't even
"Come
think
on.
about that.
He's
Come
like, come on,
on,
man.
Moses. Come on.
Get
I'm
him out
ready.
of here. He was
Put
as
me in,
excited
coach.
for him to die as I was.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, boy.
Wow. He's like, it's been prophesied. I know it's coming. I'm ready to take over. Wow.
God said that I would be next.
Yeah. So, oh yeah, one quick little fun thing. The Anakim,
Oh, yeah.
they are descendants of the Nephilim.
Oh.
But were kind
Oh.
of, by this point, thought of separately. But they were
Oh.
technically descended,
My goodness.
yeah, according to the Bible.
Wow, cool.
So I wasn't totally off there. Okay, so in looking into this, I kind of went down a rabbit hole here in reading about the book of Joshua and the accounts of these wars, which are pretty much done. Actually, like starting with next episode, there's no more wars in Joshua, as far as I know. So it all happened
Oh,
right here.
okay.
These 31 kings that Joshua conquered.
Wow. Right
And-
here?
Yeah, I think so. I think that was the 31. If we went back and totaled them up, unless I'm remembering the number
Yeah.
wrong, but it was a high number, definitely a large number. But what I ended up coming across was this concept of the fact that it had been commanded earlier in Deuteronomy about like these certain places you're going to kill everybody. Don't let anyone live, and these other ones don't kill the women and children. You can take them for your slaves.
Okay.
I don't know if
Interesting.
you remember this. This was back in either Deuteronomy or Numbers where that was kind of coming up. But
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
significant here though that in Joshua it really clearly states in each place that they killed everybody, right? That they
Yes.
didn't leave anyone
Yeah.
living.
Yeah.
They took the gold and silver for Yahweh, but destroyed everything else and burned the cities to the ground.
Yes.
Like complete and total annihilation. And when I was reading about this, the word genocide was used.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Ooh,
yeah,
yikos.
okay.
Yeah.
because it is also important to realize that all of these kingdoms are different ethnic groups. That this isn't
Jeez.
just political kingdoms, but these are mostly united by being from a common ethnicity, like the Israelites,
Yeah.
right? Who are
Yes.
all Jacob and sons.
Jacob!
There we go.
Damn.
So what I found is that there is a Hebrew word for this that's herem or herem, Herem.
Harem?
Not harem,
harem.
but similar looking. Yeah. Herem? Herem?
I'm pretty sure it's harem.
Yeah. So it basically means to devote or to destroy. It's also called the ban. But it's used in these situations where basically in reading about this, it's super fascinating. I kind of went down a rabbit hole about it. But basically the idea is that herem is this, like, you're going to go to this place and completely wipe it out. And the idea is that you're doing it not from like a political or a strategic standpoint, but from a religious standpoint. That we want to destroy anything that could be a threat to our religion. And so that makes sense of why you won't keep any of the precious things and you've got to destroy everything, right? Because we don't want any of their architecture. We don't want any of their writings. We don't want any of their people to like perpetuate these beliefs or whatever. We want to completely wipe that out. And in looking into this, and I was kind of like, yikes, that seems rough. What one of these articles pointed out is the fact that at this time and in this region, there was no distinction between a religious war and a political war.
Yeah,
that those were one and the same.
Makes sense.
Right? And kind of saying that the concept of a holy war is something that has been later come up with by historians, essentially, to explain this. But at the time, there wouldn't have been a distinction.
All the wars were holy wars.
All of them were holy wars. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it also kind of talks about why then the punishment of Achan was so strict. Because it's that same thing of like, no, we need to wipe this whole thing out completely. And the fact that he kept anything from the city was going against that. And that this is worth killing everybody, women and children and everything for. And then through doing this research, I stumbled upon a person named Philip Jenkins. Philip Jenkins.
Who the hell is Philip Jenkins? Why are y'all like Philip Jenkinsings?
Well, we were doing a Leroy Jenkins,
it's a Leroy Jenkins reference. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But Philip Jenkins is an author who's written about violence and war and stuff like that in the Bible. And in his research, because he kind of asked this question of like, whoa, this seems pretty rough. What's the deal? And then also in light of the terrorist attacks like 9/11 and like jihad and the Quran being brought into that, being like, what's really going on here?
Right, and I think a lot of Western perception of the Quran, that the Quran is like this violent book while the Bible's not.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. The Bible's full of love and the Quran's very violent. And so the quote here from Jenkins is, quote, "Much to my surprise, the Islamic scriptures in the Quran were actually far less bloody and less violent than those in the Bible." His two books are called Jesus Wars and Dark Passages. And basically he said that violence in the Quran is largely a defense against attack versus these, which are assaults,
very
right?
offensive.
Very offensive, yeah. So, quote, "By the standards of the time, which is the 7th century AD, so later, we're talking about 1400s, although written down probably around this time.
Yeah.
The laws of war that were laid down by the Quran are actually reasonably humane," he says. "Then we turn to the Bible and we actually find something that is for many people a real surprise. There's a specific kind of warfare laid down in the Bible, which we can only call genocide."
So that's the herem.
Which is the herem that he's talking about. But basically, he kind of makes this interesting case that religions, as they last for a period of time, go through what he calls holy amnesia.
Oh, yeah.
Which is basically this idea
Holy
that...
amnesia.
Holy amnesia, Batman. That basically like something that historically was very violent, like this wiping out of these tribes of Joshua, or in the Quran, this like sacrificing yourself to stop the evil influences from other people or whatever, that as a religion ages, those things become less real and more symbolic. And it's like, well, it's really about wiping out the enemy of your own sins in your heart.
Right. It's about being pure and being fully committed.
And so Islam has the same sort of thing, that for many Muslims, jihad, for an example, is an internal struggle, not a physical warfare against anyone.
Oh, fascinating.
It's been a very controversial book, of course, because there's many people who want to jump to argue against this. But in it, he makes an interesting case that in the Quran, there is a different word used for terrorism versus war, which at that time would have been like legal warfare, with rules and things around it, and just kind of making the case of like, no, like, you could justify just as awful stuff with either book if you're looking at them as like, well, they did it, so I can do it.
Right.
And he quotes things like the fact that the Bible and the way that these specific herem incidences happened were used to justify things done to Native Americans and things like that, right?
Yeah.
So it's just...
Yeah, God, there's so much
but
that
just,
you could argue there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But it just was really interesting that, I guess, to see this. And like you said, Emily, like, how do you read this as a kid? And it's like, you just don't think about it too hard.
You're not really encouraged to think about it too
hard. No, you're really not. Because if you do, it's...
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah. I mean, that's why I like this platform that we're doing here. I don't know if it's a platform, but it just is what it is. Yeah, no, but I mean, really, truly, because, you know, as someone who's a little bit older than just being told, you know, what you should believe and what you should think, you're able to actively read this and ask those questions and be like, I don't exactly understand how people can just blindly say, yeah, obviously this is the case. And I talked to some friends, you know, especially friends on this contract with me who are really Christian, and I'm like, what the heck? And they're like, well, God said that it was, you know, this was the thing, and you know, God told them to yell at Jericho and it fell down, and that's, you know, he gave them that opportunity. And I'm like, but should they have yelled at Jericho and made it fall down? I don't
know. Yeah.
So,
yeah,
well, but maybe they're not even asking those questions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you've just been given one thing to think about them for your whole life, it's hard to question it, because you're just like, no, of course it's not. But you haven't really...
But there's a wide spectrum of the ways that people think about it and respond to that and justify that and things like that.
Sure. Yeah, and at the end of the day, you know, there's always the argument of like, well, it's a history.
Yeah.
The point of this isn't that it's what you should do, it's what happened.
Yeah.
So, you know, maybe there's something there.
Well, let's talk about things happening. Let's talk about the sun. Something
right.
brighter, a brighter topic, as it were.
Oh, lovely.
Tell me about the sun. What happened to it?
Well, the most interesting thing I found is that the actual Hebrew for the verse where it's saying that Joshua asked for the sun to stand still, that's maybe a little bit of a mistranslation. That the actual Hebrew carries more the nuance of Joshua asking the sun to stop working or stop
like
doing
eclipse?
What it's doing. Yeah, so that is a theory. That is a theory of like, maybe it was an eclipse, because some people are like, why would he want... Well, some people are like, well, surely he would want a longer day, because if it's nightfall, then they're going to regroup and be able to attack better. And some people making the argument like, why would he want to be in the sun for 17 hours? That doesn't seem nice. That doesn't seem good, you know? And so maybe an eclipse would be more likely to throw people into confusion or whatever.
Yeah.
It did mention that the moon also stayed up. Like stayed still in the verse that we read, and I did wonder if it was an eclipse, but then it didn't seem to justify that in the reading. So
yeah, and the same thing. There's a lot of different interpretations. Of course, people being like, "No, this is poetic. It's not supposed to be taken literally." Some people being like, "No, he actually extended the previous night," or some people being like, "No, he just like slowed the rotation of the Earth," or some people being like, "No, he just like, I don't know, it was an eclipse," or some people saying it was the hailstorm that blocked out the sun, or...
there you go.
Now, I found more interesting facts about the Book of Jasher.
Oh, yeah, the Book of Jasher.
That is referenced.
Oh, yeah.
Referenced. So the Book of Jasher is an apocryphal book. It is a book of poetry. It's referenced a number of times in the Bible, actually, a handful of times. It's a book, and then Jasher himself... What do I know about Jasher?
You know Jasher and Dancer and Prancer.
Oh, yes. No, actually,
it
means, the translation, it means Book of the Upright or the Book of the Just Man.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was lost to history,
Oh no.
though. The book itself was
Whoa.
lost.
Wait, is it? Wait, do we still
Goodness.
have it as apocrypha?
We don't have it.
It's,
We don't
it's just
have it. It's
okay,
gone.
It's gone.
It
Wow.
only lives in reference. However,
However, I have written a book.
well, you're not that far off. In 1751, a book was published claiming to be the translated Book of Jasher. Okay.
Jasher. Yeah.
So it was published in 1751. It was claimed to be an English translation written by an 8th century abbot named Flaccus Albinus Alcuinus. So Albus Dumbledore.
That's easy to say.
Albus Dumbledore.
So Albus
yeah.
Dumbledore,
Yeah.
supposedly in the 8th century, found the Book of Jasher in Gaza, translated it into English. It disappeared for a long time, and then it was found and then republished in 1751. However, pretty much right away, people suspected it, even in 1751, because people immediately were like, someone in the 8th century could not have produced a translation in modern day English, which would have been King James English at the time.
Right.
They're like, there's no way that this would happen. So the book was declared an obvious hoax by a publication called the Monthly Review in December of 1751. The printer, Jacob
Jacobius Ilius.
Ilive. I don't know how to say his last name. Ilive. Ilive.
Livy?
I live.
I live. iRobot.
Ironically, the printer Jacob was
Ironically,
sentenced.
wow.
He was sentenced in 1756 to 3 years in jail
Jeez.
for this. And also for his radical anti-religious pamphlets. Now, that's an interesting thing. There's
Oh.
unfortunately not more information about that here in the Wikipedia.
Dang.
But not only was he sowing like these faux
Right.
translations of religious texts, but also apparently putting out anti-religious pamphlets. Maybe he was doing this purposefully to see if people would like be all about it
Yeah.
and take it as canon, and then 10 years later he'd be like, I wrote it. It was a hoax.
You're all fools.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
actually talked about this a while back. This would have been several months ago. We talked about the Book of Jasher because I
did
remember
we?
looking up a little bit of this, but we didn't do as deep a dive back
Oh.
then. But it came up also in another thing of like, as it was said in the Book of Jasher that we all know, and we were like, what do you mean? So we've talked about this a little before.
No, actually, we don't.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
funny about the
Yeah.
publisher though.
Yeah.
That part I don't
Yeah.
remember.
So be careful. If you're going to make a hoax book, make it good.
Cover your tracks.
There you go. Fascinating.
Wow.
Wow. We learned
All right.
a lot this episode. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for laughing. Thank you so much for joining us for this journey.
Well, we will see you all in the new year, I suppose, because we're done for a little while here. But I'm
Yeah.
excited. I'm excited to see what happens in the new year for Drunk Bible Study and also for Joshua and the gang.
Yeah, and we will be back on January 8th. So mark it on your calendars. Have a New Year's drunk Bible study party. We will see you
Yeah.
on January 8th.